Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Bedford Township Board of Zoning Appeals, a regular meeting, June 3rd, 2019. And would everybody please introduce themselves very quickly?
Kyle Dersch, citizen at large.
Jake Lake, Vice Chair.
George Welling, Chair.
Tom Zebek, liaison from the Planning Department.
Rick Steiner, Township Board.
Jody Rector, Planning and Zoning.
Dennis Kohler, Building Inspector.
Phil Goldsmith, Township Attorney.
Karen Kincaid, Planning and Zoning.
And Mr. Lake, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Lake. Pleasure. Karen, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Dersch,
Present.
Mr. Lake,
Here.
Mr. Zebek,
Here.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Welling,
Aye.
all present.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion from somebody to approve the agenda for this evening.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Nope. Okay, I will also entertain a motion to approve the minutes of May 6, 2019.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of our May 6th meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going into new business, and I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing regarding the appeal of Martin Solarek, 3674 Judy Drive in Lambertville.
Make a motion to open a public hearing for the variance request of Martin Solarek, 3674 Judy Drive, property parcel 5802-550-011-00.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Karen, at this time, could you give us the details on this motion, on this variance?
Yes, again, the applicant is Martin Solarek, 3674 Judy Drive. The variance location is the same. Property number 5802-550-01100, .469 acre, R2A single-family residentially zoned. The applicant is seeking to construct a two-story addition to an existing accessory building. The existing accessory building is 384 square feet, and the request is to construct an additional 520 square feet and increase the height to plus or minus 19.5 feet to accommodate a two-story building. Per section 400.1903 accessory building table, in an R2A single-family residential district, an accessory building or buildings of 800 square feet in area with a height maximum of 14 feet and a total of 2 accessory buildings is allowed, thus requiring the variance of plus or minus 104 square feet and a plus or minus 4.5 foot height variance to construct the two-story addition. The applicant has indicated in the submitted letter the proposed addition is to supply additional storage, a non-commercial workshop for the homeowner, and for large lawn equipment. The applicant has stated there is an extraordinary situation due to 2 leach fields spanning the entire rear yard. The applicant does not feel this request will have any adverse impact on the neighboring properties. The applicant has supplied a letter of no objection signed by 5 neighboring properties, and we did include that in the map in your packet. And also this evening, or this afternoon, we received and updated the map that we put at your seat. We actually received letters of no objection with 5 signatures, one of which was a rescinded letter of no objection, and they have signed the letter of objection. So when you take a look at the map that was provided to you, the addresses in red are those with no objection, and those identified in blue now have submitted letters of objection.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant here? Would you care to come up to the podium, give your name and address, please?
Martin Solarek, 3674 Judy Drive.
Okay, is there anything that you can add or you want to change or that she brought up? Anything you want to?
That pretty much sums up the request. I would entertain to discuss anyone's objections that they have with it and see if I can't quench those objections.
Okay. Well, we've opened a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that wanted to address this issue? Please come up to the podium. Name and address, please.
I'm Kathy Heckel. I live at 3661 Smith Road.
Hold it closer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is good. Thank you.
Do you want me to repeat that?
No.
Okay. I would like to address this board with my concerns. We have a peaceful neighborhood. It's not too big. Most of us have been there a long time, and we put a lot of money and time into our landscape yards. We're trying to keep the beauty of nature in Bedford Township, which is why we bought our homes there. This two-story huge building now is what we're looking at instead of the trees that we used to look at. I mean, we are tax-paying citizens too, and we disagree with this appeal to keep it up. I have learned that he never pulled the permit. I think he built it way too tall. It seemed like, to me, it seemed like he was in a hurry to get it done. And we don't know what his intentions are, and I don't think the board knows whether they're good or bad, what the intention's gonna be. We have 7 signatures that disagree with this appeal in a very small neighborhood, and we're asking the board to back us in this decision. I feel like he went about this totally wrong, and this is not the way we do things in Bedford Township. And I hope that the board feels the same way, and you're more than welcome to come out and look at what we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to approach the subject? No other public? What?
The applicant wanted to speak, I think.
Well, we're not. I'm just going to the open. Okay, seeing as there's no other people in the public, what? Okay, well, come on up.
Dave Felix, 3666 Judy Drive. Just a couple of quick questions that I have for everybody. Is the building structure was erected somewhere in January, has been sitting since the stoppage. I don't know when the stoppage was, but some concerns or just questions that I have about the structure. If it's too high, I guess I have a problem with the board. Why are we just now finding this out? To me, this feels as though we're pulling our neighborhood together and then dividing the neighborhood at the same time. And I don't know why we do that. If the township has come out and put a stoppage to the work, why are we being involved, I guess, as the neighborhood to say, hey, you know, if it's not right, it's not right. And so my question would be also, as a variance, right, for the township, if somebody decides they want to appeal or ask for a variance, is this standard procedure for the variance, meaning somebody builds the structure and then asks for the variance, or do people submit the drawings asking for the variance and then everybody votes on it before the structure is ever erected? The second thing I would ask is, I don't know what the longevity of lumber is open to the weather. This has been, what, 6 months now? And the lumber has just been exposed for 6 months. Does that mean it has to now be torn down and replaced? And I'm not sure with the variances that we're asking for today, is that you're lowering it but keeping the second floor, or we're going to keep it the exact height that it now is sitting? Another question would be, where is the electricity coming from for this building? I'm not an electrician, I don't know that. But you have a main house, you have a second garage already that's detached. You have power to both. How are you going to power a 1,000 square foot building? These are just questions that I have. So that is my concern. I don't know anything. Has anybody inspected the footers? So the answer is no.
The answer is no to that.
Okay, so we are standing here given, we don't know if the structure is even safe to begin with. And I'm not saying it is or isn't, I just don't know where we stand with the building as it sits right now.
We are here to, or, did you want to address that?
Sure, if you'd
Please,
like
go
me to.
ahead.
All right, I'll try to answer your questions. First of all, the proper protocol when you're going to construct a building within the township is come to the building department, meet with the building official, Dennis Kohler to my left, show your plans, and obtain approval for the construction of the building, pay the permit fee. Once you have your approval, you can erect the building. During that course, inspections would be made at the proper intervals. So the footers would be inspected. All the inspections that our building department will do, depending on the type of building that's being erected. So you asked why are we here now, months after the building was started? Well, in part, that's because the applicant did not come to the township to obtain a building permit in the first instance.
Okay.
When it was discovered that this building was being erected without a permit, then our building official placed a stop work order on the building. The owner of the property, the applicant who's here today who just spoke, has the right at that point to come to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which he's done, and ask this board, even despite the fact that he didn't obtain and pay for a building permit, ask the board to provide him with a variance so that he can construct a building that otherwise doesn't conform to the ordinance requirements. And in this case, that's been laid out in the variance. By law, by state law, every property owner within 300 feet of the proposed variance has to be notified. The proposed variance hearing, the variance has to be published in the newspaper, and the applicant has a due process right to come in here and appeal to this board and ask for that relief. The neighbors within 300 feet are notified. They have the right to express their objections, and then this board has to make a decision. This decision is final, it's binding, appealable only to the circuit court. Now, what can this board do tonight? This board could deny the variance, and if the variance is denied, then the structure is going to have to be disassembled. And the applicant would have to come back if he wants to build something different, even if it complies in all respects with the ordinance. He has to come in and get a building permit, pay for the permit, and then proceed from that point forward. But this board has the authority, it's a quasi-judicial board, to tell him to tear the structure down if they don't grant the variance.
Okay, so just so that I'm clear, and maybe everybody else is, so when you say tear the structure down, are you saying completely down? Or this is what I don't understand, because if we're asking for a variance and he gets the variance, at that point, then you're gonna go do the inspection? Because we don't know what it's built on to begin with, right?
If the board tonight were to grant the variance request, they have the ability by law to place conditions upon the granting of that request. For example, they could order that he pay a double or triple building permit fee because there will be additional structures or additional costs involved in inspecting. The building official could go out and say, I need to inspect footers, and therefore you're going to have to expose that so I can inspect it. He has authority in that regard to do the inspections that are required by law. So if the variance were granted and they allowed each and every variance that was requested, the building inspector still has the jurisdiction and the authority to perform his inspections and to tell the applicant to expose certain parts of the structure so that the proper inspections could be made. If they couldn't be made, he could tell them to disassemble a part of it. But that's if the variance is granted. If it's not granted, the structure's anything that was constructed without a permit would have to be torn down, disassembled, because it was done without the benefit of a permit, and it exceeds the allowances that are set forth in the ordinance,
Okay.
in terms of height, area, et cetera.
So would somebody be able to explain to me what is there a timeline for lumber that has been exposed to the weather?
I'm not an expert in
Well,
that,
that's
in
why I was
that
asking the
regard.
inspector. I didn't know if the inspector might have the answer to that.
I've seen lumber not make weather, go soft or ruin. And to remove that lumber and to replace it with new lumber has been done in the past. To say if it's good or bad, I'd have to go take a look at it and/or have somebody else look at it, an engineer or a product manufacturer or whatever, to make sure it's structurally safe. But he doesn't have the roof deck on, but the floor deck is on.
Right.
So studs and the framing members are probably fine. So the worst
Yeah, I
case
just-
scenario would be the plywood floor,
Okay.
which could be cut and removed and replaced. So,
Can I mention something real quick about the plywood floor?
yes.
Please go up to
No,
the
not yet.
No.
Wait until the other.
open hearing. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You'll be allowed to come back up and, okay.
Okay, well, I guess those were my concerns was, it is by standards too tall, too big. And, I would just like to see, I don't have a problem with a structure going up, as long as it's within, the allotted amount, that's fine. But it is I live next door and it is a big structure. And it is the size of a small house in a backyard. So that is my only concern. So, and then to make sure that footers are done properly and things are done properly is basically, I think, all of our concern. So, okay? All right, thank you.
Is there any other public comment for this public hearing? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing?
He's coming back up. Okay.
I'll second.
Support? Oh, go ahead, Jay.
Aye. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Would the applicant please come on up? And we can ask you all the questions we want and such now.
Can I address some of the comments that were
Please
made?
do.
First of all, to the young lady that came up here first, and you live on the corner of,
Sir, you have to talk to
okay,
us, me, the chairman.
she lives on the corner of Smith and J, correct or not?
She didn't, I don't remember what address was. What's your point?
My point is that she is not an exact neighboring property, and she had mentioned the fact of her having, the neighborhood is a small, quiet neighborhood with nice landscaping where everybody has invested a good amount of money into their properties to keep up the beautification of the area and the neighborhood. And she had mentioned the fact that the structure obstructed the view of the trees and the nature-esque view of the area. Being her distance away from my property, the structure does not obstruct any trees that are in her line of sight. Has nothing to do with that. And it's not an eyesore of, in my opinion, it will be a fully finished, vinyl-sided, professionally roofed building. I'm a union carpenter and have been for the last 15 years. Before that, I was a non-union carpenter. As far as the questions or concerns of whether it's built up to code, I did look up the codes as far as, footer depth and construction, building materials for their spans and load bearing and such. So I welcome and fully expect any inspections that are going to be coming forth. As far as the plywood that's on the floor that has been exposed to weather, I did pay the extra money for the higher grade plywood that has a 200-day guarantee of no sanding or warpage from weather exposure, just in case the product or the project took me longer than expected. The outside of it is completely wrapped in the house wrap to keep the elements off of the plywood.
Excuse me one second. May
Yeah.
I interrupt for 1 second? I know what you're talking about, and
Okay.
inspections will come and that type of thing.
Yes.
What the question here is whether what you're planning to do, if we will approve a variance for you to be able to do that. You know, like, to trust your ability to build things, I just, you know,
Okay.
I'm just trying to save a couple minutes here, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
As far as my plan is what I plan to do with the structure is what you're asking? It's merely storage, and there is no other, as the aforementioned in the beginning of this meeting, there's no other buildable spot on my land due to the fact that I can't build in my frontage. That's against the rules. And in my rear yard, I have 2 leach fields, which you cannot build on top of a leach field, as we all know. So this is the only space available, and being that my house is on a crawl space and I have no attic space for storage, the second story of this garage addition is to be used for home storage, all the seasonal items. And then the first floor of it would be for a carpenter shop, which is my trade of personal use, non-commercial. So the questions and the concerns of what I plan to do with the structure, I don't see how there could be any negative effect to the neighborhood as far as what I plan to do with the structure. It's not like it's going to be a commercial property or anything of that nature, or another residence in any case. As far as the views go, I mean, the majority of the houses over there in the immediate area are ranch homes, but there are also, right next door to me, towards Smith and Whiteford Center is a 2-story home. My home is a 2-story home, which then, in a sense, the garage matches the home. And then across the, Whiteford Center from myself, there are also 2-story homes.
Any other questions from the board?
Excuse me. Yes, so just one question. I know in the write-up, I saw storage is a real concern of yours. Was it ever looked at improving the home for storage? Were there any investigations into doing that as opposed to expanding onto the garage?
Yes and no. I had put some thought into it. To do so, based upon the size of my family, it's myself, my wife, and our 2 kids that live there with us constantly, and then my other 2 kids visit on every other weekend and a couple nights a week. To be able to do so, I would have to, in a sense, tear off a portion of the roof and make an addition going upward in that aspect, or raise the pitch of the roof because it is shallow pitch roof to where you don't wind up with a good amount of space in that triangle from the ceiling to the rafters to be able to put in a drop attic access to make that a usable space. It winds up being a very small space up there unless I were to completely expose the home and tear off the roof and raise the roof up in that aspect. So there was some thought process put into it, but I weighed the amount of risk or how that would make the house look, you know, as far as in comparison to what the neighbors' houses look like. I think every other neighbor around there, except for the house on the corner of Smith and Whiteford Center and a couple across the street, all have shallow pitch roofs because they were all built years ago, small ranch-style homes with shallow roofs. So that's why I chose to go with the garage addition. Go ahead.
I have to go through the chair.
Okay.
Thanks for remembering that. You recognize, sir.
Okay. You were a non-union and a union carpenter.
Yes, sir.
Finish or rough, which really doesn't matter, but I'm just
Okay.
asking.
When I was not in the union, I was a rough carpenter and finish carpenter on the side. For 8 years, I built houses up around the Ann Arbor, Ypsi, Saline area. And at the time of the housing bubble bursting is when I switched over to a union commercial carpenter and have been out at the BP refinery in Oregon pretty much ever since.
Which pretty much just addressed my next question. You're fully aware of permits.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anybody else? Mr. Stein?
Thank you. So I'm going to add to that question. It was in my mind before, Mr. Zivak. Obviously, you're a smart guy, otherwise, you don't take somebody that doesn't know anything to be able to build a home or to be able to build structures. You work at BP. I'm sure that you had to go through a lot of hoops and everything to get that job and use your intelligence there. You stated that you looked up the codes to see what you needed.
Yes.
So my question is, that right there tells me, or begs the question, why wouldn't you obtain a permit or go for permits, knowing well that the codes clearly would state that you have to meet those codes? Obviously, when you've got codes, there's regulatory agencies, and you would know that you would have to go through the proper channels.
Yes, sir.
So why was that not followed that direction?
I apologize that I am going about this backwards, and I do admit fully and honestly that it was the complete wrong way to go about doing it. I would say that in hindsight, obviously the correct order would be what was discussed earlier of following the proper procedures to go about constructing such a building. At this point, I can't really go back and change any of that, and I apologize for how I went about it. And if there has to be extra fines assessed or whatever needs to take place to move forward in this situation, I'm willing to make good from here on out.
You know, I guess that, in my mind, initially, if you had come in for the 104 square foot variance, as you did clearly state in your write-up, that you're on .47 acres, and that makes it only .03 away from the .5 acre requirement, which would allow a 2,500 square foot accessory building. In that scenario, I probably would have been inclined to say, I get it, you do have a practical difficulty due to the leach fields across your property. There's no other real place to build that. But going to the 4.5 foot height variance, I struggle with that one.
Okay. The only reason that I don't feel that it's that far of a stretch or that much to ask is because of the fact that it is shorter than my main property. It's shorter than the home, and it keeps in similarity with the two-story home.
The only difference there is you've got a home requirement versus an accessory building requirement. So that's the big difference there. If it was attached to the home and basically part of it, maybe a different story as well.
There are a lot of newer homes directly across the street from me, across Smith Road, that do have attached garages that are 2 stories. There's a whole bunch of them in there.
Right.
And that's just because it's attached to the home. I mean, so I have 10 feet of airspace between my home and my garage, so it's not allowed to be as tall as it is.
Right.
That's
all for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions for the applicant? Any other comments? Well, with that,
Well, I just had one comment. Yeah, and I looked that up. To have the type of height that this building proposes, you would need at least 3 acres in a different zone.
okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion. Is somebody working on something?
I'll make an attempt at one, but I think Rick's got some additions.
That's what I was trying to see.
Yeah.
Still. Go ahead, Mr. Lake.
Go ahead, Jake,
Okay.
and we'll,
Amend if you need to.
friendly amendments if necessary.
Yep. I will make a motion, we approve the plus or minus 104 square foot variance due to the fact of the leach fields and also the fact you're only .03 acres shy of what you require to get 2,500 square feet of accessory buildings. But I will also, I would say, I do not recommend that we allow the 4.5 foot height variance. As it is, you would require 3 acres for that. I still think you get enough space out of, square footage out of it that you would still have an adequate amount of space.
Second for discussion.
Yes.
You were going right down the lines that I was thinking, Mr. Lake. And I was going to ask Mr. Goldsmith if we needed to have 2 separate motions, but I think he's okay combining this way, or should they be 2 separate?
You can combine it into one motion. Really, it's a motion to approve in part and deny in
Okay.
part the variance request made by the applicant. Just make it clear on the record what you are moving to approve
Right.
and what you are moving to deny.
Okay. So basically, Mr. Lake, you're saying to approve and provide the variance for the 104 square foot, deny the 4.5 foot height variance, and then going back to the square foot variance, the practical difficulty would be the property with the leach fields prevents from building anywhere else on the property as a friendly amendment. And then for the 104 square foot approval, that before any further construction or activity can be done on the property, they must come in and seek a building permit and pay the appropriate fees for the building permit. Any inspections that are required by the building official and any other officials that need to be on, whether it's structural, whether it's electrical, if he puts any plumbing in or anything else, all of the authorities must give all approvals before any construction can take place and move forward.
Do you accept that?
I do accept.
Yes.
I have a question for Phil or a friendly amendment. Phil, can we put a tag on this that if the motion that's made is approved, it would be subject to inspection of what is already done, like what we had talked about, footers and whatever?
That was my intent.
Before the permit maybe is even issued. I don't know how Dennis would handle that.
Yes, you can make that condition as part of any motion, and it probably is a good idea. And you may want to leave, well, I'll just stop there. But
Okay.
yes, you can.
And Mr. Lake, one other thing, if the applicant does move forward with building permits, goes through inspections and takes care of all the appropriate, if you want to call it legal and paperwork and documentation, that the work must begin within the next 3 months and must be completed by the end of this year.
Do you accept all that?
I do accept the amendments.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Are we going to, by reducing the height, where is it going to? Ordinance, 14 feet?
Well, it would have to fall in line with the building permit and the building code.
Because, that discussion, if it were lowered,
Well, we denied the
where would it be
variance.
lowered to?
We-
Ordinance?
He can go to 14 foot or below.
Okay,
I mean, because he's got to meet the code.
okay, good enough.
I will ask after all the discussion, including people taking notes, do we have this clear?
I just have one question. Your request is for the building official to do inspections, what is existing before a permit to continue construction is issued?
I don't know, Dennis, would that be before?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay,
Yeah.
before the permit, all right.
Because there's been work done that should have had a permit to start.
And to be totally honest with you, a two-story structure can't be on a rat wall anyway, so he would have to put a full foundation below it if you did approve the 4.5 foot. So it makes sense to take it back to a single-story structure. So, anyway, not a problem, that'll work.
Okay,
If everybody's clear on the motion, just making sure, let's take the roll.
Mr. Lake,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Durish,
Aye.
Mr. Zebek,
aye.
Mr. Welling,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, next on new business, I'll entertain a motion to open a public hearing regarding the appeal of Kimberly Splice, 9696 Lewis Avenue in Temperance.
I'll make a motion, we open the public hearing regarding the appeal of Kimberly J. Spice at 9696 Lewis Avenue.
Thank you.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Karen, would you please give us the details?
Yes, again, the applicant is Kimberly J. Spice. The authorized agent is Anthony Bruskel, and the variance location is 9696 Lewis Avenue. It does consist of two parcels, 5802-014-03210 and 5802-014-03000, with a total of both parcels at 3.294 acres, agriculturally zoned. The applicant is seeking to combine two parcels and then split a total of 3.294 acre parcel with 313 feet of frontage on Lewis Avenue into three separate parcels that will require variances on each of the three proposed parcels of 1, plus or minus 5 foot side yard setback for an existing accessory building, that would be on parcel 1. Number 2, a plus or minus 230 foot frontage variance and a plus or minus 3.8 acre area variance, again on parcel 1. 3, a 230-foot frontage variance and a plus or minus 4 acre area variance on parcel 2. And number 4, a plus or minus 217-foot frontage variance and a plus or minus 4 acre area variance on parcel 3, where a minimum of 330 feet of frontage and 5 acres is required for each resulting parcel. The master plan designates this area as secondary agricultural rural residential with the intent to preserve rural character and provide transition between more intense agricultural uses in an urbanized area of the township, such as small farms, hobby farms, and rural single-family residential development with rural character and open space development at a density of 1 dwelling unit per 2.5 acres, that is per the master plan. It should be noted that a zoning district to accommodate the intended master plan designation has not yet been drafted. However, research is being conducted in preparation of a drafted ordinance for presentation for discussion with the Planning Commission and Township Board. Once direction has been given by the Planning Commission and Township Board to move forward with the ordinance amendment, the ordinance will be put in final format, and the public hearing will be scheduled as a first step of the approval process. The applicant's representative has stated in the submitted letter by Mr. Bruskel the hardship and practical difficulty, and ask that you please refer to the submitted information package. Also noted under the background in the submitted letter, it states, "It is believed that public water will be available in the near future, thereby making the connection to the water supply an additional condition to the variance approval, and that each newly created parcel would be required to connect to the existing sanitary sewer." At this time, no letters or calls of objection have been received. For additional information, Mr. Steiner did reach out to the planning department and ask that we provide a map or an identification of the various zoning districts in that area and the frontages and acreages of those parcels. You should have received a map along Lewis Avenue, north to Erie, south to Carr Park, identifying the zoning districts and the acreages, noting that agricultural is primarily located on the east side of Lewis Avenue between Carr Park and Erie Road, and the west side of Lewis Avenue is actually mostly commercial zoning districts. So if you have any questions regarding that map, we can go over it. And I think
Thank you,
that's it.
Karen. Would the applicant or the representative please come to the podium?
Good evening, Tony Brusco on behalf of the applicant.
Anything to add or to what Karen did? said?
No, Karen summarized it pretty well. I'd only, really the discussion for me was mainly looking at the overview of this particular area. In my Exhibit B, I provided an overview map. This request, obviously falling short for the agricultural district, I think falls perfectly in line with what's actually there, which is why I gave the overview map. When the request came across my desk, I sort of looked at it and thought, oh, this is a pretty significant variance request from an acreage standpoint, but then I took a look at what was actually there, and it seemed to be perfect in line with what was already existing. There's a lot of non-conforming parcels out there that don't have anywhere near the frontage necessary or the acreage necessary for that matter. Obviously, this property, I think, backs up to Pamela Street, and that entire street's non-conforming with regard to agricultural zoning, in that none of them, it appears, would have acreage and frontage requirements for an ag standpoint. But all the properties, both on Lewis Avenue, leading up to Erie Road and then heading east on Erie Road, are similarly situated to what we're trying to create here, which would be 3 sizable 1 acre plus or minus parcels. And, from a practical difficulty and hardship standpoint, you can see also from the overview map, and if anybody had an opportunity to visit the site, the majority of this property is densely wooded. So this isn't agricultural land by its traditional nature. We're not going to farm this. We're not going to raise livestock on this. This is something that we might be able to carve out a property on in the future, but otherwise it's relatively unusable from an agricultural standpoint unless, I guess, we clear it and sell it, which of course we don't want to necessarily do with beautiful wooded lots. So, the practical difficulties are right there. I guess in addition to that, I'd add that we also have a landlocked parcel here that we would be eliminating, which I believe the township would consider to be a very favorable thing if we combined it and eliminated that landlocked parcel.
Well, we are still in public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that has to comment on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that's passed. So now, does anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Bresco? Jake?
One question is, I think it has either sewer or city water, I believe. I can't remember which one it was.
I believe there's sanitary sewer out there right
Okay,
now.
so it's the requirement to be a residentially zoned, you gotta have both, correct? So, and the other is coming soon?
It's not a requirement to be residentially zoned to have either sewer or water. That's not a requirement. There are many, many parcels in Bedford Township that are residentially zoned without either of those municipal services, so that isn't a require. To the second part, to your question, it is in the works, but we don't know if it actually come to fruition, that water be extended north on Lewis Avenue from the railroad crossing north. That may happen. It may happen in the very near future. I think in the recommendation here or in the write-up, it says if this variance were granted, and I'll add this caveat, if public water is extended north from the railroad crossing, that the board make it a condition of granting this variance if the board moves in that direction, to require the applicant, when a structure is built on any of these resulting parcels, to connect to the municipal water, and also make it a requirement that any parcel, when built upon a residential structure, to connect to the sanitary sewer system. So does that help?
That helps. Mr. Chair, a follow-up question.
Well, please go ahead.
Okay. What's being proposed here would not be a problem if this was zoned differently. why not go for a zoning change as opposed to a variance request?
The applicant chose variance request, and I honored his decision.
Fair enough. Okay.
I mean, there wasn't too much more thought. I'd love to give you an elaborate answer, but that's just not how the conversation went. It was, we'd like to do this, get a variance for it, and I said, sure, let's make it happen.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
This question may or may not be able to be answered. Mr. Goldsmith and Ms. Kincaid have been around long enough that they would be the ones to be able to answer. Do you know if this, these parcels and also along Pamela, I think those were probably there before zoning took effect as well?
Are you talking those located on Pamela Drive?
On Pamela?
Pamela Drive is actually zoned residential. So the parcels on Pamela Drive are residentially zoned and residentially developed.
Is that a platted subdivision or not? Mr. Lake?
Yep, you're right.
But on Lance, if you take a look at the map, on Lance Drive to the west, there are 3 parcels, one of which is part of this application to the west, and then there are 2 others with frontages on Lance. The subject parcel that's included, is everybody following? The subject parcel that's included in this application that's been submitted is landlocked. It has no frontage, and so it cannot be developed and is planned to be attached to this subject parcel. It is also agriculturally zoned along with this. As far as answering you if these were developed prior to the ordinance going into effect, I can't speak with all certainty. If they weren't, they either came in for a variance or they were there prior to 1977.
So the 2 parcels behind the parcel they want to add, you said those are accessible by Lance?
Those are accessible by Lance. Mr. Kohler may be able to further elaborate on that if they have frontage. I know this particular parcel.
I don't think there's actually frontage there, but there's a drive that they use to get back to their parcel.
So they are taking one landlocked piece and attaching it to the piece on Lewis Avenue.
Okay, so then just an observation. I know you said the intent was to be able to bring the properties together. With all those trees, you couldn't foresee, doing anything different besides leaving all those trees there. And I know it's hard to tell from, the overview, overhead, but seems to me the legitimate answer is that they want to put it together to be able to sell 2 parcels and profit from it. If that's not the intent, why would you bother to split it once you've combined? If you want to bring property into conformance, I could see combining the parcel in the rear. I get that one. But then to split it off into 2 more parcels, which are then buildable, to me I get it. Everybody would like to make a profit when they can, but I have a difficult issue with that because there's nothing stopping anybody from combining those 2 parcels as it is today and leaving them with all the woods and everything that's there. So that's my current thought, unless somebody got something to add to that.
Mr. Lake?
Just conjecture, playing devil's advocate here, but my issue with this whole agricultural area right here, just on the outskirts of downtown Temperance, is that it's an agricultural zone that's completely landlocked with commercial and residential. I'm looking at the use of this land, and I'm trying to figure out in my head, what else would you use all of this land for? And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me what you could use it for other than residential, even though it is ag zoned. I see a problem with this landlocked agricultural area. That's my devil's advocate. I also see your point as well, Rick, where it comes to there is only one strict purpose that's going in for this, other than just to split it to make a buck off of the property, which doesn't conform with the current zoning as is. If it was residential zoning, they could just go do this.
Right.
No issue. So I think the approach might be a bit backwards. I don't know that there would be much, this is my opinion, I don't think there would be much of an argument if someone was to propose making this a residentially zoned lot.
I would agree.
Me too.
I think that, I mean, to me, I think that would have been probably a more equitable request to see about changing the zoning, just because of the types of use there. Because there's a lot of variance there from, I mean, again, unfortunately, it's ag. And we're creating a lot of non-conforming parcels if we do that. And again, unfortunately, I'd love to be able to say, you know what, let's do this, make it residential, but I can't do that. But then for us to create 3 non-conforming parcels, that's where I struggle.
I completely understand, and I recognize they're non-conforming in the ag district, but I have to ask the board just to step back and take a look at what's actually happening out there and what exists. And that's where that's the whole pitch that we're making here is, of course, I'm asking for a variance from what we're stuck with and the label we have, but I'm not asking for a variance from what is actually situated out there with every neighboring property. I'm just asking the board to actually take this section of land and make it conform with the surrounding area and have some continuity amongst the houses that are already there. Yeah, and believe me, of all the professions in the world, I appreciate the wordsmithing that I'm using, and I understand that I'm trying to put a label on something that could have been a rezoning, but the reality that I'm presenting and I'm asking you to buy into is we're here now, whether it's rezoned or it's a variance, I'm asking for the same thing. And there's no hardship to anybody surrounding it, whether it was rezoned or we got there through a variance. I would likely end up with the 3 resulting parcels at the end of the day. I don't think that by doing it through variance, even though I hear what you say and maybe I could have done it a different way, if the result was going to be the same and there's no hardship to anyone along the way, maybe the end is what we should pay attention to and not the means, and just get to that result. I don't know if that's a proper analysis or not, but and I don't know whether I'd be prohibited from coming back and just submitting an application to rezone it after this, because that wasn't part of this application. That seems like a lot.
If you did that, it wouldn't come here anyway.
Right, but that just seems like it could potentially be a lot of extra work for what might be a similar result. I don't know. But my focus when I submitted this was simply, I was really struck by looking at the surrounding area. And I thought, yeah, these are some variances that have some significance to them in the acreage especially. But it really conforms nicely with what's there. And the spirit of the master plan, the spirit of what's already out there is not harmed in any way by granting these variances. But I completely respect the approach that you were suggesting, and I'll keep that in mind for future applications.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just so the board is aware of this, because, and you may be, I guess just to give you a little history on this parcel, because I spent a lot of time in court on the 2 parcels that are in orange and the word farmed is written on them. The yellow parcel that has frontage on Erie Road that has the R2A residential designation on it, that parcel was rezoned years and years ago. And it's being farmed, but it's zoned residential. The parcel to the south of that has the ag designation and says farmed, and then the parcel to the west of that has the ag designation and says farmed really isn't ag, and that is through a circuit court order. The circuit court does not have the authority to rezone property. Only the legislative body of the township can rezone property, and that's the township board. However, there was a lawsuit filed by the owner and the developer of those lands, and that a circuit court order was entered by then Circuit Court Judge Michael LeBeau that prevented the township from enforcing its zoning ordinance as to those parcels and allows residential development on those two larger parcels. So even though it shows as ag, there is that circuit court order that restrains and enjoins the township from enforcing its ag zoning district on those two parcels. So they could be farmed for a long time. Really what happened is that that lawsuit was just before 2008 or thereabouts, and the bubble burst in the real estate market. And even though there were preliminary site plan approvals for a huge residential development that would have allowed upwards of 450 homes to be built in that general area, because of that bubble, and you've probably seen the for sale sign there that's been there for years, that property eventually will more than likely be developed as residential. So just to give you a history, I guess just some history on that, even though it's shown here as agricultural, it can be used as residential pursuant to the court order. So for the extension, if they wanted to, of Village Meadows to the south, and Village Meadows wraps its way up around there, you can see where the R3 designation is. So just some more food for thought during your deliberations.
I just had one quick statement for the board too, that if you wanted to restrict the use, take some ag uses away from those parcels and make them residential only, the board would have that option also. You know, that if the board did create it.
That circuit court judgment, is that just for this particular area here?
The judgment does not affect the property that's represented by the application and represented by Mr. Breskel. That doesn't affect that. It affects the orange where it says farmed on it with the two question marks. It affects the area to the south of, to the north of Village Meadows that says ag and it's farmed. And to my knowledge, that property is still being farmed and has been for quite some time. But it can be when the owner decides to be developed residentially.
Thank you. Wanted to make sure I had it clear. Any other comments or questions?
Before we make a motion, I think my one comment would be around procedure and requesting what would be required to be requested to do this the right way to allow these variances to go in. So I'd like the board to think on that before we make a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
this is for Mr. Goldsmith. To better describe the properties you're talking about, so if you look at the map and you look at number 15 to the far left of the page,
Yes,
straight across
yes.
to the center, that's the parcel you're talking about saying it's farm with a question mark. I don't think there's any farming going on whatsoever back there. I think it's all mostly trees and wood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why there was a question.
Yeah.
mark. I'm
Okay.
looking
Yeah.
at an old aerial map there.
So then,
Probably not, but that was part of, I believe that was part of the, part of the real estate involved in the lawsuit,
Was that
because
part of it?
it provides access to,
I didn't
I think
that
it
was
used to
part
be
of it.
farmed, and there's actually a drain tile that's plugged, so it's flooded right now. But there's actually motion.
Yeah, there's
to
a lot
try
of
to-
water there.
They're trying to, in fact, the road commission was just trying to figure out why the roads are not draining. And they went down, they followed the water, and there's actually a plugged culvert underneath the railroad tracks that is not in their jurisdiction, but is holding back the water that should be draining. So it used to be a farm field, and it hasn't been used because of the water.
Maybe that's why
And
Lewis was
we're-
blocked at the tracks the other day when I was up there.
They're trying to take care of it.
So I didn't remember that parcel because I was here back then. I didn't remember that parcel. I knew the one that was in yellow, the north-south rectangle. I do know that was part of the lawsuit. I didn't realize the piece going across.
Yeah, actually, that was, the R2A parcel was rezoned before the lawsuit, and there was some movement afoot by a community action group to try to get the township to revoke or rezone it from R2A back to ag. But there were certainly investment-backed expectations.
Right.
And that property wasn't rezoned, but to the south of that is, was part of the lawsuit, which is in between that R2A district in yellow and Village Meadows to the south. And then also part of it was that, I believe that parcel, a couple of those parcels that have the designation farmed with the question marks, which you're right, that's low lying, and it used to be farmed years ago, but in recent memory, I don't think it's been farmed. It's pretty low.
To the south and to the right of 14, that was, I know that was part of it, right?
Yes, yeah, yes.
That, in fact, I think, wasn't this property, was it Kujno property that owned it?
Albrings.
Albring, that's it, Albring,
Yeah,
yeah.
Albrings owned it and farmed it, and then sold it to some developers.
Okay, yeah.
And the reason why I questioned it being farmed is when you look at the aerial, a good portion of that parcel at one point, this is from 2010, was farmed at one time. It may not be because of access limited.
Water. Okay, board, is there any more discussion, or questions, comments? If there is none, the chair will look for a motion.
Can make a motion if.
Yes, Mr. Lake, please do.
I would like to make a motion that we deny the request as submitted. Reason to support that is you would create 3 non-conforming parcels where there's already 1 non-conforming in an ag district. Recommend that the applicant seek to have this resubmitted as a zoning change request.
I'll support that.
Any other discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Just a moment, please. Did we close it? Yes. Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Zebek?
Yes.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Dersch?
Aye.
Mr. Welling?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next on our new business, I would like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing regarding the appeal of Rodney Hill, 11081 Seco Road in Temperance.
Motion to open the public hearing?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. And Karen, could you please give us the details on that?
Yes, again, the applicant is Rodney Hill, 11081 Secor Road. The variance location is the same. He is representing himself. Property number 5802-130-00700, 1.421 acres in an R2B single-family residential area, seeking a 2-foot height variance. The applicant is seeking to construct a 24 by 56, 1,344 square foot, 16-foot tall pole barn where up to 2,500 square feet and 14 feet tall is permitted per section 41903 accessory buildings on a 1.421 acre lot. The applicant has indicated the existing 600 square foot detached garage on site and is in poor condition and will be demoed and replaced with the proposed structure. In a conversation with the applicant, it was indicated the taller structure is required due to the need for a taller door to house the camper, and the new construction will be placed in the same location as the present garage to utilize the existing concrete pad. The applicant has indicated the structure will be used for storage space as well as providing a working space. It shall be verified the building will not be utilized for any commercial uses. At this time, there have been no letters or calls of objection to the request.
Mr. Hill, could you come up to the podium? Name and address, please.
Rodney Hill, 1108 One Secor Road.
Any additions to what Karen did there?
That pretty much sums it up. I have a camper I've had since '96 that sits outside behind the existing garage now. Through the years, my wife decided to upgrade, so we got a bigger camper, which is taller. And we got it through Camper World without great elaboration. Camper World got more money for a camper than he should have, so I need to get this one inside before any more damage is done to it.
So that must be the one in front of the garage.
In front, yeah.
Yeah,
in front of
that's right. The, we still have an open hearing. Is there anybody else with any comments on this subject? Yes, sir? Up to the podium.
My name's Ken Waldron. I live at 11049 Secor Road. My only concern is I wouldn't like to see anything commercial happen here. I really have no objection to the building, and I guess it must meet the code or he won't let him build it, and for square footage of the building he wants to build and everything. That's really only my objection. Oh, I shouldn't say it's an objection, it's a concern. That's all.
Thank you very much.
My name is Sheila Stulo. I live at 11053 Secor, next door to Mr. Hill. My concern, again, as Ken, was that I didn't want commercial going in. I don't want to hear that it's a second story somewhere for someone to live or run a business. I'm also concerned that he's going to do the work himself, not a contractor. How long is it going to take? How's he going to dispose of the original garage that's there right now? Is it going to have heat, electricity, plumbing, all that stuff? Because he is not, in my opinion, qualified to do that stuff. I'm sure that the permits and everything say that a homeowner can do these kind of things, but that's a huge building compared to what's there. It's 24 by 24 right now. That's more than double what he's already got. That's really long. That's why I came tonight. I had no idea how huge he was planning on doing this. And I think that for a little tiny camper and I think this is a bit much to just be storage. Okay?
Thank you. Any other comments from the public on this during the public hearing? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Would you care to come up to the podium and any questions or discussion with the applicant? Well, my first question is, how tall is this camper?
Well, it's a typical camper, so it's like 13 foot. So with a code code that it is right now, I can only go 14, which would make the ceiling height of the garage door basically 10 foot. So I wouldn't be able to back it in there because the air conditioner's up on top. So that's where the height's coming in. far as the length goes, I also got a road bike in there. My garage that's out there right now is a road bike, four-wheeler, flat bottom John boat we use for duck hunting, and riding lawnmower, wagon, not to mention other chainsaws and stuff that I use for cutting firewood. And this is definitely not going to be a commercial building long as I live there. As far as the stuff that's in there, by the time I get the campers and stuff in there, the room that's going to be left is going to be nominal. I'll be able to get stuff in and out without having to move everything out to get something out. I mean, I went with Menards, Kurt Kirchhoff, which he lives 3 houses down from me as a builder, which is going to be supervising the work. I have an electrician that's 2 houses over, Ken Peters. He's a certified electrician that he will be doing some of the electrical, probably most of it anyways. There's already 60 amp service in the building. I ain't planning on putting any more. I didn't want 100 amp service out there, don't need it. It's going to just run some lights and, maybe a grinder or something now and then for the stuff that I work on that breaks. Because I do my own work to the trailers and stuff. I don't have the money to pay Camper World their wage, they'll say, politely. But, so most of the camper work and stuff is done myself, which again is just nominal. I'm getting too old to be doing anything more than that. I'm a machine builder, so I build machineries. I can read prints pretty well. My company sends me out to do field work in places. I was just recently in Mexico, so understanding codes and measurements are pretty easy if you're going down to 100,000ths. Building a pole barn that is done with 1/4 inch, I think I can handle that with the supervisor, Kurt Kirchhoff. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Steiner.
So, Mr. Hill, it looks like you're going to have, is that about a 10-foot wide door, or?
it's a 16-foot wide door in the garage right now.
Okay.
And it's a 25 by 24 garage with the overhang.
You talking about the existing?
Your new, is it for the new one?
New one.
What's your new door?
Oh, the new door is going to be 16 too. It'll probably be
16
the
foot.
same.
Okay. It's just deceiving looking at the picture of it.
There are prints from Menards in there.
Yeah, we've got that.
Yeah. And then I'm
Just-
just gonna have the side door and the front door. My wife's been toying with putting a 8-foot garage door in the back corner so I could drive my lawnmower out the back, so I got a dog that's got a fence, so I don't have to open that fence. I could just go through the garage to the back, but that's still,
Well, the first thing that I was guessing that, because I had a long camper years ago, and to be able to pull possibly your tow vehicle and the trailer in that 56 feet, well, that was my thought. You were probably looking for that length.
right, to get it back into a corner, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, you could even put your truck or whatever you pull it with, you could probably get that inside depending on the length of that camper.
Correct.
Yeah. Because like I said, I owned a trailer back then. It would have been nice to put it somewhere instead of having to take it to a storage facility and.
Well, the camper we have is kind of going to be a short-lived because my wife tends to like the idea of just going in and out without having to, because of the pop-up for the years, I'd go out and crank it up and crank it down, crank it up, crank it down every time you go. She kind of likes the idea of just pull it forward, load it, drive off, and then drive home and plug it in, and when she gets done, she gets to unload it in her leisure. And this one's just a little bit small for her. She seems like she's already interested in something a little bit longer, so I'm kind of like.
I will say, the concerns over electricity and if we're going to do any kind of other mechanical work, that's not really there. You're following the right process.
Right.
You came to this board first, and I know some people might think, well, we just denied this accessorial building on another property. But each property and each request has its own total set of reasons behind it, so we can't go on something else. This is only a 2-foot request. The other was 4.5-foot request. You also have 1.423 acres. The other one was 0.447 acres. So again, they were R2A, you're an R2B, I believe it is. So there's quite a bit of difference there. When it comes to anything done on a property, again, number one, you've come here, the building inspector already knows that you're going to be looking for permits if this is approved.
Right.
And then whether it's the guy right down the street from you that's doing, the electrical or somebody else, it's going to be inspected by the building official or the contractor that he hires to come out there. And it's even, it's stated in Ms. Kincaid's write-up about being verified that there will be no commercial use. I know you've said that, but then that would be, if this is approved, that would be a stipulation that is attached to the variance as well, with any other conditions. Just putting the trailer and the boat in there, those two things right there are going to take up quite a bit of that garage, so.
It's only 24 foot wide, so it's not like 30 or 40
Yeah,
or
now,
60. So
if you were 30 foot wide or
losing the
something.
narrowness than in the width.
Right.
So.
And there's nothing directly behind your home. When I was out there, I saw there's basically land out back.
Well, you didn't see my rice field?
Yeah.
In other words, right now, it's about knee-deep in water back behind there. So.
But other than that, there's nothing directly behind your property.
I also think it's worth noting that you're allowed up to 2,500 square feet, and you're only using, 1,344.
Yeah.
A little over half.
Yeah. So that's, just the 2 feet that,
It's just the height is all I need. And actually, I could go with a box beam frame, which I was looking at, and then I could back it straight down the middle, but then if I catch the edge of it, I take a beam out, it may not be so good either, so.
A little bit bigger issue.
Yeah.
any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question for our clarification that maybe Mr. Cole can answer. If this was a 1.5 acre lot, he is allowed a 16-foot height, is that correct?
I believe he is, but there's a bigger setback from the property line,
Correct.
right?
You go from 5 foot to 10 foot, it appears.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that and make a note for the board.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? If not, board will. It's, the time's over for the public comment.
See, I didn't know anything about how long this thing was gonna be. This is gonna just completely, what are you gonna do with the other garage?
Ma'am,
Are you gonna burn it?
point of order, ma'am.
Burn everything out?
Point of order, ma'am.
See?
You had your point. You had your time.
You never addressed what he's gonna do with the old garage.
He said he's going to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Ma'am, you're done. Okay. I'm looking for a motion.
You don't have to live next to it.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to make a motion for the variance on the subject property of 11081 Secor Road to accept the variance to allow 16-foot building height with be a 2-foot variance over the 14-foot allowance. And really, as our discussions indicated, if this was a 1.5 acre lot, which he's at 1.4 acres now proper, he would be allowed to construct such a building height.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second for some friendly amendments. First friendly amendment, that of course, the current structure must be demolished and the debris must be removed from the site appropriately.
You have to get a demolition permit from our building
And-
department first.
Right, and get a demolition permit to demolish the garage. I know there was a comment about burning. Well, number one, if you start a fire on a structure like that, you are illegal, and the fire department will not look too kindly upon that.
Correct.
So that will not happen.
The one thing I would like to say, if I can,
Yep.
is that the roofing and all that stuff's gonna go, but I would like to salvage some of the 2x4s.
Salvageable, that's another story.
Okay.
But debris, calling it debris, that's gone.
So no burning of any of the garage? Or can he burn the wood siding?
It's T11, I don't.
T111?
I'm gonna probably reuse some of it for shelving on the new
I
garage.
think that would depend on the fire department and the ordinance department, what he can do and what he can burn.
Okay.
Just any burning on site has to be done in full compliance
With
with
fire code.
Bedford Township ordinances, the burn ordinance, and the regulations that go with that. Certain materials cannot be burned under any circumstances, hazardous materials such as asphalt shingles, things of that nature, so you could make that part of the.
So I will restate that, because I was really inferring to you can't burn your structure down. So what I will say is, following the Bedford Fire Department's code, which is the National Fire Code, you would have to follow all the stipulations in the fire code as to the type of material that you can or cannot burn. But again, we know you're not going to be able to burn the structure itself down as is. Certain parts of the structure of wood or siding that may be salvageable can be used by the applicant. Also, must be verified once again that there will be no commercial use. And of course, going through all of the permit processes, inspection processes, et cetera, to obtain all of the appropriate approvals before the structure and facility could actually be used once it's completed in the construction phase.
Easy enough.
Do you accept the friendly amendment?
I accept.
Okay, we have a vote and a second. Take the roll, please.
Mr. Dersch,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Zebek,
Aye.
Mr. Welling.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next point. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Next thing on our agenda is public comment. If anybody has anything to say. Doesn't look like there's many.
Anything.
Anything?
I need you at the podium, sir. Why not?
Name and address.
We are, as Ken Waldron again, we are, as you know, in Ballman Plat. And I have tried a couple of different times to go online and look at the site maps for that. And it always says out for updating or something. Is that always going to be like that?
Go ahead, Karen.
The zoning map is still being updated. We're still working with the GIS. There was a conversion, and so we're still working with getting those into a situation where those amendments can be made to them. We don't want to leave the old zoning map up there that may provide incorrect information. We would prefer to have someone, once they see that notation on there, call the department, and then we can obtain the proper information and even email to them the proper zoning map, taking it by section. So we encourage contact. As far as the other maps, we do not have those available on-site. Aerial maps and things of that nature, we do not have available on the website.
Thank you, Karen.
So if I understand that, I have to come in here to get a map? Oh, that's okay. No?
We can email it if you have an email address.
Yes, I do.
We can scan portions of the map that you're interested in obtaining, and we can email them to you at your home.
I was just interested in Ballman Plat, probably 6 of the lots.
If you would leave us your email address. We can go ahead and scan that information and send it to you.
You'll probably laugh.
Well, we'll do it afterwards, then you can write it down for
Yes.
me.
It's no big deal. It's walleyeken@msn.com.
It's been around a while.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And go walleye, right?
Yeah.
Gee,
Okay.
leaving
Uh,
smiling.
Public comment is now closed. Any comments from the board? What's said?
None at this time.
I'm good.
I have a question. When I was up Lewis and Erie, the Bridgeport Church ball diamond and dugout looks terrific, but the fence is totally plastered in advertising, like a NBA baseball team, whatever. Is that permissible? I understand it being a church, they're trying to get some donation money, but that's all you see.
Well, they did contact us, and we reviewed that as we would any other facility where activity is taking place, such as the school has the same type of, the bowling alley where they play volleyball. They have some, as long as they're on the interior of the fence and not on the outside facing outward, we do permit them as sponsorship or however, as long as they're not bringing it out toward the road and facing the road.
I thought about that, but at the same time, I just want to make the comment, I'm not tattling on the church. But when I rode by there, I just couldn't believe all the signs.
That's because that black fence is so transparent now that you can see right through it. It's almost as if it disappears when it's black, and I was amazed at that, actually.
So it's handled, in other
Yes.
words.
They did contact us prior to doing that, and we had a discussion and decided that the schools do it, some of the other activity facilities do it, as long as they keep it on the interior of their fencing and not on the outside.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
They did do a
Steiner?
nice job up there.
Yep, beautiful.
Other than that, nothing additional.
Jody?
I didn't have any comments till Tom spoke. Tom, I got to ask, how many baseball teams are in the NBA?
No, I was just going NBA, baseball, anybody who has signs on the stadium.
Fair enough.
or-
We're going off agenda
I'll give you
here.
a
I
chance
can
to
see
clarify.
that. Jody, did you have anything?
He just
Dennis?
wanted to take a
I have
shot.
nothing either, but I'm going to start a new team.
Yeah,
He's going to have to check with the PBA.
yeah, Mr. Goldsmith.
No comment.
Karen, what information? Only comment I have is, thanks again to the board for working through this. And again, my compliments to the planning department and the building department. We had a lot of information here, and it was all ready for us. And that's it. If anybody has anything else?
If I may say one more thing?
Oh, jeez. Go ahead. Yes.
And I really appreciate that you did go out and visit the sites, because it does give you some insight as to what the surrounding areas are that we have a difficulty including in your packet, so thank you.
Nothing else? I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.